The January 2015 Awake magazine changed my life forever. It's ironic. We were always warned never to look at apostate material because it could poison our minds and cause doubts. Yet, it was the Watchtower's own publications and videos that was the catalyst for me leaving the Jehovah's Witnesses. It wasn't bad association, not the worldly media, not even apostates. It was their own words. If you've watched episodes from my JW story on this channel, you know that I had really awful anxiety. Bad anxiety and talking to strangers about religion is a bad combination. I prayed and decided one way to overcome this anxiety was to know the publications inside and out, especially whatever I was presenting out in the field ministry. That way I would have the confidence to answer any questions or conversation stoppers that might arise. It was late 2014 and I had prayerfully made a resolution that beginning in the new year, I would read the magazines thoroughly and meditate on them. I had hoped this would quell my anxiety. Little did I know what was in store. The January 2015 Awake began. Some might assume that a scientifically minded person would pick evolution and that a religious person would pick creation, but not always. Rama Singh, professor of biology at Canada's McMaster University, says, the opposition to evolution goes beyond religious fundamentalism and includes a great many people from educated sections of the population. Interesting, I thought. A Canadian professor from McMaster University that didn't back evolution. I decided I should read his entire research paper to familiarize myself with its contents. I wanted to answer any objection at the door. I found his profile on the university's webpage along with his research papers. The printed quote was deep in the paper entitled, Darwin's Legacy, Why Biology is Not Physics or Why Evolution Has Not Become a Common Sense. As I read, I got more and more confused as to why the Awake quoted this professor. He clearly did back evolution. Even just reading the context of the quote used in the Awake was enough to see that. The opposition to evolution goes beyond religious fundamentalism and includes a great many people from educated sections of the population, including biologists, non-biologists, and the lay public. This essay will focus on the lack of belief in evolution in this latter group. Opposition from religious fundamentalism has been covered in many places. There are several reasons why facts of evolution are not easily comprehensible by the general masses. The paper concluded by saying, knowledge of evolution is required for a good understanding of all aspects of our life, from the functioning of our body and brain, to our relationship with our fellow human beings, and the environment around us. This article is based on a Genetics Society of Canada Award of Excellence talk given at the annual meeting held at McMaster University, 17th to the 20th of June 2010. The motivation for this article came from friends and colleagues in the humanities and social sciences who are seriously interested in dialogues between evolution and religion, but who lack appreciation for the subtleties of evolution. This article is dedicated to them. I felt really uneasy. Why would the organization print an out-of-context quote in the Awake from someone who taught evolution? But I dismissed it and continued on to the second paragraph. Consider Gerard, a professor of entomology who was taught evolution at college. When I took tests, he says, I would give the professors the answer they wanted, but I did not believe it. That's odd. A professor that went by just his first name? That's weird, right? He's even mentioned several times in the article. On a hunch, I downloaded a PDF of the magazine in a different language to compare, and discovered his full name was Gerard Hertel. A quick Google search for a Dr. Gerard Hertel, entomology professor, found this bio at Westchester University. It said he had a Bachelor of Science from the University of Montana. I kept digging and found the alumni page with him listed. Gerard D. Hertel, 65, writes that he is teaching the Bible as one of Jehovah's Witnesses and doing research as an adjunct professor in the department at Westchester University. I rubbed my face and sat in silence. They quoted a Jehovah's Witness in the article without saying he was one. In the first article of the first magazine I had vowed to read in depth, there was an out-of-context quote and a professor that wasn't identified as a Jehovah's Witness. I had horrible mental discomfort. I didn't know the term at the time, but the cognitive dissonance was hitting me hard. But I pushed it away. Obviously, it was me that was at fault somehow, I told myself. I continued reading the rest of the magazine quickly. I read it just to get it done. But I decided not to use that issue of the Awake in the ministry that month. It made me uncomfortable. You might be wondering what the big deal was. It was just a quote taken out of context. Big whoop, right? Well, To me, it was a big deal because of what I had read in earlier publications. The January 1st, 2003 Watchtower in the article, "What Can Help Us to Handle the Word of the Truth Aright?" said, "A theater critic for a newspaper once went to see a certain play. He did not much like it and afterward wrote, 'If triviality is what you happen to be wanting, by all means go and see this play.' Later, the promoters of the play published an advertisement that featured a quote from the critic's review. The quote was, 'By all means go and see this play.' The advertisement accurately quoted the critic's words, but it lifted them out of context and thus grossly misrepresented his view. That example illustrates how important the context of a statement can be. Taking words out of context can distort their meaning, just as Satan distorted the meaning of Scripture when he tried to mislead Jesus. On the other hand, taking the context of a statement into account helps us to get a more accurate understanding of its meaning. For this reason, when we study a Bible verse, it is always wise to look at the context and see the verse in its setting in order to understand better what the writer was talking about. Notice who the February 15, 2011 Watchtower said used information out of context. For example, paying attention to apostate propaganda can becloud our thinking and blind us to the value of the spiritual food at the proper time, made available by Jehovah through the faithful and discreet slave. Andre, who had served Jehovah for years, had the bitter experience of being led astray by apostate thinking. He felt that having a quick look at an apostate website would not be dangerous. He recalls, "Initially I was attracted to the so-called truths that the apostates spoke of. The more I examined what they said, the more I came to think that I was justified in leaving Jehovah's organization. But later, as I did some research on the apostates' arguments against Jehovah's Witnesses, I became aware of how crafty the false teachers were. Information taken out of context was their strong evidence against us. Thus, I decided to start reading our publications again, and to attend the meetings. Soon I realized how much I had missed." Happily, Andre returned to the congregation. I hope you can now understand why using quotes out of context was such an issue for me. It was what Satan, the devil, and apostates did. The 2011 yearbook took pride in how hard the writing department worked to make sure everything they printed was accurate, tracing all things with accuracy. Jesus said that the faithful slave would be discreet in giving the domestics their food at the proper time. Christ thus indicated that those who dispense this food would be conscientious, prudent, and discerning in providing spiritual food for the household of faith. In our time, Christ's anointed brothers use the writing department in Brooklyn, New York, to provide spiritual information in the form of magazines, brochures, books, and other printed and electronic material. This spiritual food, like physical food, has to be well prepared. Even Bible writers who are directed by Holy Spirit made sure that they recorded information that was thoroughly researched and accurate. Luke, for example, spoke to many eyewitnesses and traced all things from the start with accuracy. The writing department follows the pattern of tracing all things with accuracy. It continues, "Thus, the writing department looks to standard reference works, articles written by recognized experts, and books produced by respected publishers. The writing department itself has a comprehensive library with thousands of books. Additionally, our researchers make use of nearby public and academic libraries. They can also obtain specialized material from other sources by means of interlibrary loans. One of the large university libraries that our researchers use has some 5 million books, 58,000 periodicals, 5.4 million microforms, and thousands of electronic databases. The writing department also maintains a large archive of clippings, experiences, and historical information that is constantly being updated with material from local sources as well as from our branch offices around the world." And then they cite a couple examples of how carefully researchers verify information, taking many hours and meticulous calculations. Another example on the next page. Sometimes even minor statements require additional research to confirm their accuracy. For instance, a brother may say in his life story that he was born in Czechoslovakia in 1915, but Czechoslovakia did not come into existence until 1918, so where was he born? Settling the question might require examining old maps or historical records. The section concludes by saying, "In summary, the writing department insists on using only material that is accurate and truthful, even regarding seemingly insignificant details. As a result, the faithful and discreet slave can consistently supply spiritual food that brings honor to the God of truth, Jehovah." My mom still had a VHS copy of the video, Jehovah's Witnesses, the organization behind the name. I watched it a lot. Notice what it said here.
At the direction of the writing committee, timely spiritual food is prepared in the form of magazines, brochures, books, and booklets for the entire organization. To supplement the libraries, newspaper and magazine articles are filed for additional research by writers. The research is careful and thorough. The information, reliable and authoritative.
The older Theocratic School Guidebook on page 110 says, accuracy of statement. Jehovah's Witnesses are an organization of truth. We should want to speak the truth and be absolutely accurate in every detail at all times. This should be so not only as regards doctrine, but also in our quotations, what we say about others, or how we represent them. Also in matters involving scientific data or news events. Wrong statements delivered to an audience may be repeated and the error magnified. Inaccuracies that are recognized by an audience raise questions as to the authority of the speaker on other points, perhaps even calling in question the truth of the message itself. A newly interested person hearing such statements and having heard a different view expressed on another occasion might come to the conclusion there is disunity of thought among Jehovah's Witnesses and discontinued association without even revealing his reason. The December 1993 Kingdom Ministry said, "The Watchtower and Awake are products of careful research and are provisions of the faithful and discreet slave." June 1st, 1967 Watchtower even made the claim that members didn't need to do any research because the society did it for them. We may think of study as hard work, as involving heavy research, but in Jehovah's organization it is not necessary to spend a lot of time and energy in research, for there are brothers in the organization who are assigned to do that very thing, to help you who do not have so much time for this. These preparing the good material in the Watchtower and other publications of the Society. But you do not study enough? Take this suggestion. Often the very best and most beneficial study you do is that done when you read a new Watchtower or Awake, or a new book with the joy of getting the new truths and a fresh view. A few months passed before I decided to look at the January 2015 issue again, to investigate further. It was bugging me. A brain itch that needed scratching. I went to jw.org and downloaded a PDF of the issue, and I stared in confusion. The quote from the Canadian professor was no longer there. What was going on? I googled his name in January 2015 Awake. Professor Rama Singh had written a scathing response to his misquote on the university website and wrote an opinion piece in the Hamilton Spectator. My heart was pounding as I read his letter. I'll read the main portion. Dear Editor, I am writing to protest your Awake magazine article, The Origin of Life, 5 Questions Worth Asking, dated January 2015, in which you have misquoted me by taking half a sentence out of context from my article on evolution. Contrary to what you imply, I do not support a creationist view, nor do I suggest that even a minority of scientists support such a view. Anyone who reads my article can see that I fully support the theory of evolution. In my article, I follow the paragraph from which you have misquoted me, with material showing why the facts of evolution are hard to comprehend for many people. My article is meant for people who want to understand evolution, but who do not have the expertise to do so, not for creationists like you, who oppose evolution on religious grounds. Your misquotation amounts to intellectual dishonesty, and reflects on your character and dignity as editor, as well as a man of God. I can understand that you do not accept evolution as an explanation for the biodiversity on this planet, but I cannot understand why you would knowingly misuse a scientist's work to make him appear supporting the creationist point of view. I have received inquiries from many evolutionists, atheists, and former members of your organization who brought the above misquotation to my attention. I agree with them that your misquotation of my work is deliberate and meant to convince your followers in the truth of creationism by perpetuating false support from scientists. So I am asking you first to remove the misquotation from your article immediately, and second, print an unconditional apology for what I consider is a deliberate damaging action on your part to my reputation. The goal of religion is to seek truth, to remove ignorance and fear, not to perpetuate myths and lies. As a man of religion, you may have the need for God, and as a man of science, I may not, but we both should be on the same side when it comes to the pursuit of truth. Believers need truth as much as non-believers do. If I may suggest, As an organization, you should stop wasting your time and perpetuating lies against evolution. Religion and science need each other. As Einstein remarked, religion is lame without science, and science is blind without religion. Religion and science are both driven by reason, but they operate in different domains. Religion seeks absolute truth. Science proceeds through incremental steps. Religion is the reason to keep science marching. The Catholic Church and its leaders, including Pope Pius XII, Pope John Paul II, and most recently Pope Francis, have albeit slowly but progressively accepted evolution and do not see conflict between religion and science. God is not a magician, as Pope Francis said, and it's insulting to human intelligence to put everything at God's door. Jehovah's Witnesses should feel liberated in supporting evolution, as it would free you from proselytizing false doctrine and allow you to dig deeper into the meaning and the mystery of life. Now I understood why they had edited the magazine. But interestingly, I never saw a printed apology or explanation on jw.org, as was requested. The organization just 1984'd it. It never existed. They also eventually removed the audio file for the first article from jw.org. If anyone has the MP3 saved, please send it to me. I would love to have it for my research files. I wish I had downloaded it at the time. However, if you go to the Internet Archive Wayback Machine, you can still see the original unedited article with the misquote. Also, if you site search jw.org for Professor Rama Singh, you'll find that as of the time of this video, they neglected to edit it from several different languages. Back to 2015, I was in full panic mode by this time. Eventually the letter from the professor was no longer on the university's website, so I wanted to reach out to him, one last-ditch effort to show that maybe it was all a hoax or a big mistake and he didn't actually write that scathing letter to Watchtower. His reply was simply, "Yes, I did." So I began searching for other experts that Watchtower had quoted and finding their contact info. I bought a big 3-ring binder and started compiling my research. Back in 2011, the Watchtower had a 2-part series about when Jerusalem was destroyed. They claim it was 607 BCE. Without 607 BCE, their 1914 and 1919 doctrine completely falls apart. I decided to start there. The researchers quoted were emailed, and some of them replied. The quotes from my article are correct, but quoted out of context. What I have argued is actually exactly the opposite. His email concludes, "But it is flatly impossible to backdate events 20 years. As happens so often in this kind of argumentation, the authors find a few texts with some minor problems, try to solve it via substantial change in the accepted chronology, and so creating thousands of new problems, which they do not and cannot solve. The documentary basis for the traditional chronology is so overwhelming that in fact a waste of time to discuss it in great detail." Another simply replied, "I was misquoted. The year of the destruction of Jerusalem was 586 BC. Another replied, "Thank you for your email concerning the citation of my work in the recent Watchtower article. As you suggest, the author of this piece is completely misrepresenting what I wrote, both in what they say about the lunar 3 measurement and in what I say about the possibility of retrocalculation of eclipses. My comments on the latter were restricted to a distinct and small group of texts, which are different to the diary they are discussing. Just glancing through the Watchtower article, I can see that they have also misrepresented the views of other scholars by selective quotation out of context. I've looked at the data VAT 4956 on several occasions and see no possibility that it can be dated to anything other than the conventional date. It wasn't until closer inspection of part 2 of the Watchtower series that there was a footnote that said, "Note, none of the secular experts quoted in this article hold that Jerusalem was destroyed in 607 BCE. This angered me. Why were they purposefully using out-of-context quotes from experts that knew Jerusalem wasn't destroyed in 607 BCE? It proved it wasn't an oversight. They were purposefully being intellectually dishonest. I kept looking up experts and finding misquotes. It was pervasive. They quote-mined repeatedly. For example, in the book Life, How Did It Get Here by Evolution or by Creation, they quote Richard Dawkins in The Selfish Gene. At this point, a reader may begin to understand Dawkins' comment in the preface to his book. This book should be read almost as though it were science fiction, but readers on the subject will find that his approach is not unique. Most other books on evolution also skim over the staggering problem of explaining the emergence of life from non-living matter. So I bought the book to look up the full quote. This book should be read almost as though it were science fiction. It is designed to appeal to the imagination, but it is not science fiction, it is science. Cliché or not, Stranger Than Fiction expresses exactly how I feel about the truth. The entire preface is the exact opposite message Watchtower was conveying. And evolution doesn't tackle the emergence of life from non-living matter. That's abiogenesis. So even the title of the book, Life, How Did It Get Here, starts off completely wrong. It wasn't until much later I realized that was one of the minor out-of-context quotes in that particular book. But even though it was minor, it didn't align with what Watchtower said about insisting on using material that is accurate and truthful, even regarding seemingly insignificant details. In the spring of 2015, I attended the memorial but had stopped auxiliary pioneering. It felt like my entire belief system was cracking. And then the May 2015 broadcasting came out with governing body member Stephen Lett. After watching it, I broke down crying. I was always proud that money was hardly talked about in the organization. The literature had always been no charge from before I was even born. I viewed it as proof that we had the true religion. The first thing I noticed before Stephen Lett began talking about money was that he wasn't wearing his pink earring. That stood out to me for some reason.
We warmly welcome you to another edition of JW Broadcasting. But now, I would like to address the valuable things that may have first come to mind. Material possessions, or financial giving and support. As you know, for over 130 years, this organization has never solicited for funds, and it is certainly not going to start now. We don't send out monthly statements to each of Jehovah's Witnesses specifying a dollar amount that should be submitted to finance the work worldwide. Most donations, in fact, are contributed anonymously. Over the years, I have told various Bible students that a person could attend our meetings for 20 years and never put a penny in the contribution box, and we would not know it. Jehovah, of course, would know it, but we would not, because the donations are anonymous, but from the heart. Where does all of the financial support come from? Largely from you, dear brothers and sisters. Most funds come from what you voluntarily put in the contribution box in your Kingdom Hall. Yes, that little box with a slot that is labeled Worldwide Work is primarily what finances all of the theocratic initiatives that have been implemented. Of course, there are many other ways to contribute. Sometimes we may feel a little shy to talk about the financial needs of the organization. That is understandable, because we in no way want to be categorized with other organizations, religious and otherwise, that coerce their supporters to donate. However, because all of us have the privilege to donate funds, we would like to let you know something about our current situation. Then you can respond as your heart impels you. As you might have sensed, I am not shy about this subject. We have looked forward to this next fiscal year and projected the expenditures for all of the theocratic initiatives we are scheduling. In doing the math, we found that the amount of money flowing out will be much greater than the amount of money that we have coming in at this time. Again, we are not in any way desirous of creating a hardship on anyone. However, we felt that if you knew the circumstances accurately, you would apply Proverbs 3:27 to the situation. There, we are encouraged not to withhold what is good. It is encouraging to note that even in lands with limited resources, the very poor contribute to the cost of their kingdom hall and its maintenance. We're all Jehovah's united people, even if we do not have much materially. If our heart is willing, there is usually something we can do, even if it is merely offering 2 small coins of very little value, as the poor widow did.
The excuses he used referencing the Israelites fell flat. Any religion could also make that claim as cover for asking for money. And then he began with the guilt-tripping and shaming. He was no different than any other televangelist of Christendom. Interestingly, today the May 2015 episode has been removed from jw.org, but you can still find most of the segments posted separately in other categories, including that particular begging for money talk. That summer, a news article on child sexual abuse in Australia led me to a government website that was investigating many different churches, schools, and other organizations. But it was case study 29 that caught my eye. The Jehovah's Witnesses. In July and August 2015, the Australian Royal Commission into Institutional Responses to Child Sexual Abuse in the Jehovah's Witness organization was streamed from their official website. I made sure to catch it all live because I didn't want to watch an altered or edited video from the proceedings that an apostate could make. Even though Bethelites, elders, and a governing body member testified, nowhere did I see the assertion that Jehovah's name would be magnified or that Holy Spirit would help out. Luke 12, verse 11 and 12. When they bring you in before public assemblies, government officials, and authorities, do not become anxious about how or what you will speak in defense or what you will say, for the Holy Spirit will teach you in that very hour the things you should say. Luke 21, verse 14 and 15. Therefore, resolve in your hearts not to rehearse beforehand how to make your defense, for I will give you words and wisdom that all your opposers together will not be able to resist or dispute. I was embarrassed for those brothers as they stumbled, squirmed, stared in silence, or gave outright false statements. I knew watching it live the organization did not have Jehovah's blessing. Even more telling was that this was never mentioned once in the legal news section on jw.org, even though a governing body member testified. Watching the testimonies, I discovered for the first time that the elders had a secret manual that regular members were not allowed to read. I read it front to back and was shocked. It's easy to find via Google, but if you want to download directly from the government site, click on Exhibits, then on Hearing Day 147, click on 150 Show, and scroll way down. Please watch the entire proceeding from beginning to end and follow along in the official transcripts from the government site if you think the videos have been edited in any way. I have links to the Australian Royal Commission case studies, Shepherd the Flock Elders Manual, as well as a YouTube channel you can watch the proceedings on. It wasn't until later that I saw an older edition of the Elders Manual hiding in plain sight in the Proclaimer's book, in case any non-elder doesn't believe you. I was a mess. The quote-unquote truth was my whole life. I believed in everything I had been taught, that we had the true religion, that I would see my dad again in paradise on earth. In that span of about 7 months, using only the publications and the words of elders and governing body members, I had began waking up. In the following years, I continued to do research using only Watchtower publications. Little did I know that I was reinventing the wheel, so to speak, because many before had compiled so much evidence. But it was good that I proved it to myself without any outside worldly influence. It hasn't been until lately that I have felt strong enough to share my story. It almost feels like a bad dream now. It took many years to come to grips that I was raised in a high-control religion. Many nights I cried myself to sleep. I am now in a much better place emotionally and mentally. I have been enjoying spending my free time making videos to help others that are waking up, or that have had seeds of logic planted and need watering. Whatever you're feeling, you are not alone. It's scary and can take time to grasp the consequences and enormity of it all. This was my waking up story, or the start of it. I am not trying to change your minds. I want to help those that are strong enough to face reality and aren't afraid to dig deeper. Those who are not afraid to confront the cognitive dissonance they encounter when they see or hear something that isn't right. This is for you, and I hope it helps you on your journey. As always, thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Special thanks to Atlantis for providing documents, and to Sparking Lab and my anonymous supporters who bought me coffee. I appreciate it very much. See you in the next video.